In 1938, the Nazis launched an expedition to Antarctica. To the Nazis, this land had mystical origins. What they discovered there, however, would change the world. The wreckage of an alien craft powered by a rare dust called VK. The alien wreckage with its mysterious power source was brought to Berlin under a shroud of secrecy. But despite numerous warnings, the secrets quickly leaked to other nations. The race was on as nations across the world searched for the elusive VK dust. Dust and the secrets of alien technology accelerated national weapons programs in a new frantic arms race. The war raged on with no end in sight. Advanced weapons continued to pour out of factories to meet the needs of the battlefield. In a few short years, heavy artillery evolves into a mechanized artillery, or mechs, and quickly become masters of the battlefield. Borders shift as governments rise and fall. Now the year is 1947. And the war for dust continues. This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today let's learn to play Dust. Dust has two rule sets, the premium rules and the epic rules. We're going to start with the premium rules. And here's all the goodness inside the box. Dust is a Fantasy Flight game, so everything here screams quality. So get your bits together. We're going to set up the game. Step 1, set up the playing board. The playing board is composed of 6 giant puzzle pieces you'll need to put together. Step 2, dealing the opening hand. So first shuffle the deck thoroughly and then deal 6 cards to each player. Each player will place 1 card face down in front of them. At the same time, players will all flip their cards over. The order of play is then ranked based on the highest number on the upper left-hand side of the card. All ties are broken by the number below that. The remaining 5 cards becomes each player's opening hand. In step 3, you will place your capitals. Dust has some cooperative elements. Basically, you're going to be teamed up, 2 players per nation. The chart below gives an example of how these teams should be composed. Essentially, you want to balance the number of players you have teamed up with the number of nations, while still leaving some room for confrontation. In games with less players, open nations are populated by neutrals. Step 4 is what I call the Dust Rush stage of the game. By play order, each player will place a tank unit on a land area or a power center until none remain. I call this the Dust Rush stage because every player will try to grab as many VK mines or power centers, as they're called, as they can. Please note this stage is only for land areas. Sea areas remain open for the time being, and you'll also notice there are a few power centers out in the oceans. Those you'll have to fight for later. In step 5, each player places 3 production centers on a land region they occupy. It's important to note that you can't place the production centers on the power centers themselves. In step 6, you'll place reinforcements. Each player gets 12 production points plus the production points on the card they played at the beginning of setup. Each player uses these points to buy units that are then placed by the production centers they own. The cool thing is the game round pretty much mirrors the setup process. In Phase 1, the initiative, every player will place 1 card face down in front of them. Everyone flips their cards up and the order of play is ranked. The player with the highest combat value goes first and so on. If there's a tie, it's broken by the movement ranking. In Dust, it really matters who shoots first, so there's a lot of jockeying for position. Phase 2 is broken up into 3 parts. So the first phase, Phase 2A, is the production phase. Each player will calculate their production points based on the number of capitals they have, the number of production centers they hold, and the production value on the card they played during the initiative phase. These production points are used to buy new units and place by your production centers. There is a maximum number of placement of 5 units per production center. The major difference here is that you can also produce more production centers or buy yourself cards for your hand. Speaking of cards, if the card you played during the initiative phase is the Diplomat or the Mech Builder, please remember that you can use the special abilities on these cards. You can also use your production points to purchase units for neutral nations. The strategy here is to block other nations from conquering these neutral nation capitals and gaining the 6 production point bonus. The second part of Phase 2 is movement. In Dust, there are a ton of ways to get your pieces around the board. I've shown them here on an example board to give you an idea of all the different options you have. The number of times you can move during a turn is governed by the movement points on the card you played during the initiative phase. When you spend a movement point, you can move all the units in a chosen area. Units can move as far as they want as long as their path is a chain of friendly or unoccupied areas. Once you've moved your units, it's time for the combat phase. Check the card you played during the initiative phase. The first value in the upper left-hand corner is the combat value. That's the number of times you can attack. Just as there's a ton of ways to move in Dust, there's a ton of ways to conduct combat. The graphic on the screen shows all the different ways you can attack in Dust. 2 of the attacks are special cards that can be activated if you had those cards in the initiative phase. Each attack costs 1 point. So if you spend your attack point on the mech dropper, then you can drop any number of friendly mechs on 1 target area. If you spend an action point on the ballistic missile card ability, then you can attack a region with 3 dice and remove units that are hit. Those are the special card-based attacks. Now let's look at more conventional warfare. When combat is declared, first you need to calculate tactical supremacy. This is what gives you the initiative to go first in combat. Match the units in the battle to the grid below to add up all the tactical supremacy points. The person with the highest points goes first, unless that person has a capital. Then that person goes first. Next, you're going to want to look at the combat value of each of the units. The combat value tells you how much dice per unit you get to use in the attack. Finally, if the region of the battle has a capital or a production center, there are bonus dice awarded to that player who owns those. If it's a capital, the player gets 5 dice. If it's a production center, the player gets 3 extra dice. The player who won the initiative gathers up the necessary number of dice and rolls first. If you roll the dice and get the target symbol, it's a hit. If you roll the dice and it's blank, you miss. If a player rolls all blanks 3 times in a row, then his forces automatically retreat from the battle. Count up all the hits, and the player gets to remove the opponent's units of his choice. Then it's the opponent's turn, but only with the surviving unit, so that's why initiative is so important in this game. Let's look at a sample battle to illustrate. So here's our example. First, let's calculate tactical supremacy. In this example, there's a capital involved, so that player automatically gets tactical supremacy. The black player is going to put out dice for each one of his unit's combat value. The black player rolls the dice and scores 4 hits. The black player gets to remove 4 of the red player's units. However, there is an order of elimination rule here. For the air units, the fighters must be eliminated first, and for the land units, the tanks must be eliminated first. Then with his last hit, the black player chooses to take out the red player's bomber. Then we switch to the red player's turn, and he's basically screwed here. I can't watch, let's move on. The card you played during the initiative phase may have a special power that you can use as a combat modifier. This screen shows all the cards and kind of an abbreviated definition of the powers that those cards hold. A few of the cards can only be used in specific phases, such as the Mech Builder and the Diplomat, which are used during the production phase. Many of the cards, however, directly impact combat and allow you to reroll dice, add combat values, and other abilities. Let's tie up some loose ends in the combat section. Battle mechanics play out the same for naval combat and amphibious combat with a few exceptions. In naval combat, there is no tactical supremacy calculation. Both attacker and defender roll their dice simultaneously and remove units. In amphibious combat, there are no retreats allowed, so it's to the death. Normally, after the first round of combat, you can retreat if things aren't going your way. And in case you're still wondering, no, this mech would still have to finish the first round of combat and survive the second round before he can retreat, so he's still screwed. In Phase 3, you're going to add up your victory points. So you're going to calculate a victory point for every capital that you own, every power source that you hold, and there's 3 majorities. The player with the most land holds the land majority token, the player with the most sea areas holds the sea majority token, and the player with the most production facilities holds the production majority token. Each player will add up all his points and move his tank token on the victory track at the bottom of the board. Depending on the number of players in your game, once you've hit your winning condition, you've won. For better or worse, the fate of the world is decided, and it's time to collect all the respect that you are due. For better or worse, the fate of the world is decided, and it's time for you to collect respect from your fellow players. Or just drink more root beer. And that just about wraps up the gameplay for Dust. Now it's time for some final thoughts. Obviously, I'm a big fan of theme in my board games. Game mechanics may be the powerful engine that drives us forward and exhilarates us. But theme is the lines, the style, the leather, the chrome that makes a car. Something more than a machine, but a luxury. Great games have the whole package. Unfortunately, the Dust wargame is a little lacking. Paolo Parente, the Italian godfather of cheesecake, created the world of Dust, and it is full of theme and cheesecake, which in my book is not a bad thing. Hi, I'm Ben Harsh. Don't let the high voice fool you. I like pretty girls. Anyway, besides that, the game has a really intriguing backstory. There really was a Nazi expedition to Antarctica, although so far there's no hard evidence that the Nazis found alien technology down there. Contrary to what we all learned from Raiders of the Lost Ark instead of actually paying attention in history class, Hitler was not obsessed with the occult. In fact, he ridiculed people who were. It was Himmler who was the occult nut. Himmler was behind the idea that Antarctica was the cradle of the Aryan race, and Aryans were descended from the gods and such. During this time, morality was already cast aside in the relentless pursuit of science and power. Imagine a chance discovery of advanced technology and a new energy source, introduced to a world that was already spinning out of control. In this alternate timeline, the atomic age was skipped entirely for the dust age. Well, Paolo Parente did, and there's an entire alternate history written for this world. The Dust wargame just didn't take as much advantage of the rich mythology as it could have. Even looking at the game board, it's pretty stripped down just to be as generic as possible. The game screams Risk knockoff, even though it's not really. I guess what I was hoping for stylistically was Axis and allies with mechs. The gameplay delivers in that department in a simplified fashion, but the board didn't quite do it for me. I mean, the 3 nations are not even named at all. The capital placement is also really strange. So the capital of what I assume to be the Allies is headquartered in New York and Quebec? Sounds like a French-Canadian wet dream. The area I assume to be the Axis power, because it's not named on the map, has capitals in Berlin and Moscow? I thought Moscow was part of the Sino-Soviet Union. That's really weird. Apparently not. The Sino-Soviet Union has capitals in Tokyo and China. I'm sure this is for gameplay and balance issues. But every time I look at the board, it's like a misspelled word. It keeps jumping out at me. And don't get me started on the power centers. Why are they bullseyes? That's just dorky. You could have done so much more with this board, even if you were to resort to cliches like jutting, glowing green crystals coming out of the ground for the power centers. At least that would have given me more of an idea what they were. I had to look it up in the book. Which pretty much sums up the problems with the theme of this game. You have to look it up in the book or read other sources. It's not on the board in front of you, which is a shame. As with many Fantasy Flight properties, this game is now out of print. If you stumble upon a copy and pick it up, it is a fun game. However, if you get a group of friends together, I'd recommend giving them a little background on the mythology of dust to get them immersed in the story before they start playing. I think everyone will enjoy themselves a whole lot more this way. Well, that's it for this episode of Harsh Rules. I'll see you guys next time.